Hey guys, in this video we are going to be going over Arithmetic series, which is lesson 1.5. If we think back to our previous lessons, we first started learning out what a sequence was. A sequence is just a list of numbers that follow a pattern. So like 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. We might have the pattern, it might start at 20 and then go up by ones. 20, 21, 22, 23. And then we learned about formulas for these sequences. And the reason we need formulas is because if I give you a list of numbers and ask you to find the 1,000th term, you're not going to want to type in your calculator plus 2, plus 2, plus 2 1,000 times. And even if you try that, there's a good chance that you'll mess up and have too many plus 2s or not enough plus 2s. And so the formula helps us with that. And so then we learned about sequences, and then we kind of brushed in and came into learning about a series. And a series is when we take that sequence, we take that list of numbers, and we add the numbers together. So if we have the numbers 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, just having the list of numbers is just a sequence. But when we start adding those together, that's when it becomes a series. And if you think about numbers and what you've learned about numbers, we know that numbers go on forever. They never stop. Like you could be counting for the rest of your life and then they still wouldn't stop. So it seems impossible to add numbers forever. Like you're never going to find an end. You're never going to stop. So when we do series, we just add for a certain number. So like the problem may say for the first 10 or the first 7 or something. So we don't add forever. But a series, we're taking those numbers and we're adding them. So we're going to get into specific series. So arithmetic series, for example. And I want to refresh on our formula. So if we go back and we look this isn't going to work because I was in a different one. If we go back and we look, that's geometry, goodness. At arithmetic sequences. This is the formula right here that we learned. So we're going to refresh on it a little bit and then we'll rewrite it. The formula always starts with A sub n, an A and an N. And that just means any term, some term in this sequence. And if you find the 7th term, that would be A sub 7. The 50th term would be A sub 50. So that N represents, which term is it? Is it the 7th term, the 20th term, the 5,000th term? That's what N is. That D is your common difference, and A sub 1 is your first term. So we're going to go back to our notes and we're going to rewrite this formula just so we have it handy. A sub n, that means any term, some term. If it says, if you see A sub 20, that means I'm talking about the 20th term. The 20th number that's in the list. Okay. And so when we're doing series, we're going to start out, I'm going to show you 2 ways to do a series, and most of the time you can pick. Most of the time people prefer this first method that I'm going to show you, but some people like the second method. But I'm going to show you 2 methods. The first one is using sigma. So if you remember back to 1.4, you learned about sigma, and you learned how to type that in your calculator and evaluate sigma. It's the big E looking thing. And so we're going to do that, but now you're going to figure out, you're going to plug in those numbers to sigma yourself. You're going to figure out what the formula is yourself. And so when we're doing that, we have the big E, and then on the bottom, we always put n equals 1. And then at the top, we always put, the number changes. It depends on the question. And then we also have to figure out the arithmetic, the formula. So a few different steps here. Hopefully once we get through a few examples, you'll start to catch on. So question number 1, we have the sequence 5, 8, 11, 14, 17. So you want to look at those numbers and figure out, what is it, arithmetic, is it geometric, and what are we adding or multiplying by? Since this whole lesson is about arithmetic series, they're all going to be arithmetic. So that means that we're going to be adding some number every time. And that number is 3. We're adding 3 every time. So always we're going to start out by writing the sequence formula. And that formula is generic. We're not plugging in. Right now, we're not dealing with that 8 right now. We're not finding the 8th term. That part is coming, and we'll use that 8 in just a minute. So AN equals, that common difference is 3, n minus 1, plus, and then we write our first term, which is 5. And this is the formula that we're going to put in sigma. I am not going to require you all to distribute that 3 and solve. You can just leave it like this, the 3 with the parentheses. You don't have to distribute. You don't have to turn it into like 3n plus 2. You can leave it. That'll make it easier for you. So if the question just said, write the explicit formula for the sequence, we would be done. But we are learning how to evaluate the series. We're taking the sequence and we are finding the sum of the first 8 terms. We're finding the sum of the first 8 terms. So now we're going to draw our sigma. So do the best you can. Basically, we have 2 horizontal lines and then we make the zigzag in between. That's how you make the sigma. On the bottom, you always put n equals 1. You always put that. On the top, you're going to put 8. And then over here on the side, you're going to put this formula. And that's it. So now all we have to do is type that into the calculator. So if you remember from the last lesson, I showed you how to do that. I'm going to show you again. I probably won't show you the calculator on this video every time just because it is a little kind of annoying to do. It keeps logging, like keeps pulling my notes out and I have to keep going back into them. So, but I will show you for this first time. All right. So when we're typing sigma in the calculator, you start by hitting the math button on the far left. Then you can scroll up or down until you see the summation or the sigma. If you remember that it's 0, you can go ahead and hit 0. And then we hit x equals 1. And then we go up to that box and we type in 8. And then we go over into the parentheses and we're going to type 3x minus 1 plus 5. And hit enter. And I get the answer of 124. So in this question, we were able to take a sequence and find the sum of the first 8 terms. And we use sigma for that. Let's look at number 2. So this one, we have the sequence 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, all the way up. And we know that we're finding the sum of the first 13 terms. I know that because that's kind of what the question said. You may also see it written S sub 13. That also means sum of the first 13 terms. But it just says to evaluate the series. And so I remember that series equals sum. So those are just some things that I remember. And so if I'm going to evaluate this series, then I know that I'm going to be using sigma. That's one of the 2 methods to evaluate the series or to find the sum. What goes on the bottom? N equals 1. Always. What goes on the top? 13. And then the part that goes over here on the side, we've got to figure that out. We have to figure out the formula. So I know that it's an arithmetic sequence because it's adding 5 each time. We're doing plus 5, plus 5, plus 5. Since we're adding the same thing every time, that means that it is arithmetic. All right, and so for my formula, my common difference is 5 because that's what I'm adding every time. And my A1 is 10. Now here is a common mistake that a lot of people do. A lot of people have gotten in the habit of seeing that n equals 13, and so they want to plug in 13 for that n. But when you're doing sigma, because of the way sigma works, you don't do that. The only place that you plug in that n or that number 13 is there at the top. You have to leave the variable n in the formula. You don't plug it actually into the formula, not with sigma. So now we're going to type this into our calculator. I'm going to walk you through it, but I'm not going to show you. All right, so in your calculator, hit the math button. Then you're going to scroll until you get to 0, or you just type 0. I'm going to type x equals 1. Remember, this variable right here and here really can be anything. That can be x. It can be any variable. X equals 1, and then go up and type 13. Then scroll to the right, and we're going to type in that formula. 5 parenthesis x minus 1, close your parenthesis, plus 10. And that gives you, when you hit enter, 520. So if I were to look at the sequence 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, and so on, and I were to count out 13 numbers, and I add those together, I'm going to get 520. All right. We're going to look at number 3. If you feel like you're starting to get the hang of it, or you kind of got it, then go ahead and pause the video and see what you can do without help. If you're always just writing what I'm writing, you don't really retain it as much because you're just writing it without thinking almost. So it's always good to try it yourself. And then when you get stuck, then you pause the video, or then you play the video and listen to the explanation and follow along. So for number 3, the sequence is 1, -1, -3, -5, -7, -9. And it is arithmetic because I am subtracting 2 every time. We're decreasing by 2. 1 minus 2 is -1. -1 minus 2 is -3, and so on. And I'm asked to find the sum of the first 20 terms. We're evaluating the series for the first 20 terms. And so when I'm evaluating the series, the method that we're doing is sigma. With sigma, we always put n equals 1 at the bottom. The number that goes on top comes from my question. Your question will tell you that number. And then to the right is the formula. So I've got to go figure out what that formula is. So a sub n equals, we start with our common difference, -2, n minus 1 is in parentheses, and then plus our first term, so plus 1. And now I have something that I can type in my calculator. Math 0 x equals 1 at the bottom. If you like typing in n, like typing in the letter n, and you want to hit alpha and then you want to find the n, that's okay. That will work. I personally prefer just using that x, t, theta, n button that's under mode. I think it's faster. I'm going to go up and type in 20. And then go over inside the parentheses, -2, parenthesis, x minus 1, parenthesis, plus 1. And negative, come on, 360 is what we get. All right, number 4. This is the last example we will do in this video. I may see if I can find a YouTube video that has some additional examples. I don't know if I'll find a good one, but if I do, I will also post it on there. All right, last one. I want you to pause the video right now and see if you can do this one by yourself. Test yourself. So pause. All right, hopefully you paused it and you at least tried it and at least got started. So we are asked to find the sum of the first 34 terms. I know this is arithmetic because I am subtracting 2 every time. Every time I'm subtracting 2. So that means that it is arithmetic. I know I'm going to use sigma, so I'm going to go ahead and start filling that in. N equals 1 goes at the bottom. 34 goes on the top. And then I have to plug in, I have to figure out what that formula is. My common difference is -2. N minus 1 goes in parentheses. Plus -6. Now, anytime you have a plus -6, that's really just the same as saying -6. That plus negative turns into just a minus. If you type in plus negative in the calculator, it'll still be okay, either way. All right. And now we're going to type this in the calculator. Math, 0, x equals 1 on the bottom, 34 on top. And then on the side, I'm going to type -2, parenthesis, x minus 1, parenthesis, -6. And then I'm going to hit enter. And I get -1,326. All right, that is all for this video. So go back. If you still are a little iffy on this, just go back and rewatch the examples again. Seeing it multiple times, well, eventually you'll start to kind of see things that you may have missed the first time. Because when you're writing stuff down, it's easy to miss some things. So go back if you're still struggling, rewind the video back until I get to the first example and just watch it again. Have a good day.